Julian Assange is the mother of Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks. She lives in Queensland. Ms Assange, good morning to you.
Good morning, John.
Julia Gillard just said that she still thinks that your son is irresponsible and he's being treated like any other Australian in custody overseas.
Well, he isn't any other Australian in custody overseas, is he? His case is huge and has ramifications around the world for free speech. And it's not just an ordinary hearing. The hearing is full of flagrant legal rights and human rights abuse, and this has been told to her by most eminent legal minds in Australia. She's received many submissions from people, even from her own backbench. I mean, people, for instance, like Graham Richardson has called it a fit-up. Bob Brown has said he was being fitted up. Sarah Hansen said that she was more interested in appealing to the US allies than him. Peter Farris says that if it was just Joe Bloggs with these minor allegations, none of this would be happening. As usual, she's talking about getting the job done. Well, I'd like her to go and get the job done and do her job that she was elected for, and to ensure that my son has his legal and human rights protected.
It's hardly reasonable, is it, or you can't really expect the Australian government to pick a fight with the United States over matters that embarrass the Australian government as much as they embarrass the United States, can you?
Sorry, John, just on that one pass me again.
You can't really expect Australia to pick a fight with the US over material that's just as embarrassing to us as it is to them.
Well, I think that we've elected people not to be so sensitive about being embarrassed. We've elected them to protect our legal rights and to stand up for what is right. We're an independent nation, and it's a little bit more than just embarrassment. Leading figures in the American government have gone on television calling for his assassination, for people to murder and kidnap him. If this was an American citizen in Australia and it was happening here, the President of the United States would be coming out.
Julia Gillard says it's just her personal view that it's grossly irresponsible. So
Look, she's entitled to her personal view, John, but not as Prime Minister. Her role as Prime Minister is different from her personal view, and she seems to have a problem with a lot of boundaries, actually. She doesn't know the difference between her personal view and legal rights. She doesn't know the difference between a publisher and an irresponsible and illegal whistleblowing act. I don't think she's particularly informed, and I don't think she wants to be informed. I think she's pandering to the US, and she either is one of two things. She's either ignorant and uninformed, or she's deliberately pandering to the US and leaving an Australian citizen in a terrible state overseas where his legal and human rights are being breached. And that has been said by everybody all around the world.
You, in your letter to Kevin Rudd, you highlight, it's an 8-page handwritten letter of which I've had a copy given to me, you highlight the difference between Kevin Rudd's representations on the one hand and Julia Gillard's on the other. Are you saying that the Australian government, if Kevin Rudd was Prime Minister, would have behaved differently to the way it's behaving with Julia Gillard as Prime Minister?
I'm not sure, because Kevin Rudd isn't following through on his promises. He's got a history of being a diplomat, and as you know, the role of a diplomat is to smooth everybody over and to fawn all over everybody and keep everybody calm. So the fact that he's made the statements was good, but as a foreign minister, he's actually supposed to act on them. As he hasn't acted upon them, then I don't know that he would be better as Prime Minister. If he hasn't acted upon them because he's chosen not to act upon them, which is what I've challenged him in my letter to come out and say, then he wouldn't be any better as Prime Minister. If he's not acting upon them, as I've stated in my letter, because he's being threatened or intimidated not to act upon them, then he ought to also come out and state that. If that's the case, and he was Prime Minister, then yes, he would have been a better Prime Minister.
Why doesn't your son just front up to the Swedish courts and deal with the allegations against him?
He's been trying to do that for 4 months, John. He's tried over and over again to get interviews with Marion Nye.
But not in Sweden, in England?
No, in both, in Sweden and in England. His lawyer in Sweden was trying to get an interview with Marion Nye. She kept refusing. He waited 40 days in Sweden after he was supposed to leave on business. She still refused. When he got to England, he had to go to England for a number of reasons. One was he had to attend to his work over there. In addition to that, there were threats to kill him from the US, so he had to go into hiding. But when he was in hiding, his lawyers were still in contact with Marion Nye through Scotland Yard, and they asked Marion Nye to, under the mutual legal assistance protocols, to come to the embassy, the Swedish embassy in London, and have the interview. Alternatively, he would fly in for the weekend. Alternatively, video link. Alternatively, phone. She refused all of them.
Yes. As matters stand, my time with you is limited. The weekend newspapers, both the Australian and the Fairfax newspapers, the Age and Sydney Morning Herald, had different extracts from different books, both of which have been rushed into print, about your son. He's described in each of them as being a bit of a control freak.
Well, I think possibly disgruntled employees think all their bosses are control freaks, don't they? You would have to have a strong measure of control over an organisation like WikiLeaks. It's trying to protect whistleblowers. There would have to be very, very tight protocols to do that.
He's also described as having extraordinary powers of stamina and concentration, but also being a maverick, an unusual personality.
Well, I think it would take an unusual personality to stand up to world governments without fear or favour, wouldn't it, John?
Do you fear
the
for
average
his...
person wouldn't do that.
Do you fear for his well-being, both physical and psychological?
Absolutely. Can you imagine the pressures he's under? In addition to calls to threat, kidnap and assassination by heads of state, that is something like a fatwa, an American fatwa. We've got that going on. Then we've got the Australian government compromised by fitting him up with the US government. Then we've got the Swedish court breaching all its police protocols, the European law and human rights covenants. And on top of that, we've got people trying to make money out of it, people who are close to him. He's got so many ticks on his back, it's a wonder he can breathe.
At the same time, he seems, from what I witness on television extracts and the like, he seems to quite enjoy the attention.
I don't think he's enjoying the attention. I think what he's enjoying is the success that the project that he's set up is actually working. That's what he's enjoying, that he's being vindicated. With these leaks, for example, the leak on Clean Feed, where Kevin Rudd said the reason Clean Feed was going in was to protect children from child molesters. But on the back of that, which is the real reason he was trying to put it in, was to close down political discussion and including WikiLeaks in this country. Okay, then we got the leak on Mark Habib and the leak on Julia Gillard. These are very enlightening leaks, and he does feel satisfied that Mark Habib had been funneling information to the US covertly, even behind the backs of some Labor Party people for the last 5 years, that Julia Gillard had been plotting with the faceless men for 12 months for the coup of Kevin Rudd, an unheard of thing in Australian politics. Well, and it goes around the world, so he's very satisfied that his work is providing transparency to the people of the world.
All right, I'll have to leave it there because of the news. I'm grateful to you for taking our call.